Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Robert Allen wants to start the conversation about self-care. Let's see what he has to say. Robert, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Robert, you have one of the most interesting backgrounds of any guest we've had on the show. And you and I were kidding before the show. What haven't you done? So please tell our audience a little bit about your various history.
All righty. Well, I have a background in education. Graduated from the University of Detroit Mercy. Went from there, got a master's in counseling at Wayne State. And then just various other degrees, master's of divinity from Urchin Graduate School of Theology, and master's in healthcare mission leadership from Loyola. So I've been a teacher. I've been on the police force as a chaplain, a board certified chaplain in the hospitals, and have my own consulting company and wrote a book.
Wrote a book, and you've also been a football coach, if I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like it's nothing. You do so much you don't have time to remember. You're part of the ministry that you're keeping us on the straight and narrow every day. And, of course, your own company. So you've been there and done that on many venues. Let's put it that way.
Yes, sir. Yes, I have.
Now, your book is self-care. How would you define self-care for us?
Self-care is whatever fills your cup in your most needful space is how I define it. So I'll say that again, whatever fills your cup in your most needful space, which means self-care is progressive. It's not a one-size-fits-all at all. It's very progressive.
Is it a pill, though, or is it exercise, or is it talking to a mentor?
Well, you know what? It's a combination of all those things. So wherever a person are in their life will dictate what self-care they need. Now, there's healthy self-care practices where we can get into, whether it's meditation or prayer or solitude and finding peaceful places. However, wherever you are in your stage of life and what fills your cup is going to be different. So, for instance, let's take a person that's single and don't have a family. What they're going to need for self-care is going to be quite different from someone who's married, two kids, and them stretching themselves to take care of the needs of their wife or their spouse and their kids and their career. So self-care will differ depending on the person.
Is it being self-indulgent? When I think of self-care, I think of going for a massage or maybe a steam bath or something kind of a luxury out of the ordinary that maybe I would win at a raffle or something and really treat myself well for 6 hours or a day or something like that. Is that what it's about?
Well, not just that. It can include that. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the steam showers and massages and things like that. So it could absolutely include that, but it's not just that. In the book, I talk about 4 R's. And the 4 R's is, the first R is to, to retreat, to get away, to simply remove yourself from all distractions. The second R is to reflect. Take that time after you've gotten away to really, truly focus on what things are working well in your life, what things needs to be adjusted. What are some of the things that you love and like to do? The third is to replenish. What really fills your cup? Who fills your cup? Is it mentors? Is it coaches? What people drain you and what things drain you, but what things also fill you and add value to you. And the last R is restore. Being able to move forward in a restored place, which means a like new space. So like new in your heart, like new in your mind, like new in your spirit, a restorative place. So incorporating the 4 R's is what I would like to allow everyone to understand is a major portion of self-care.
Now, we all have the enemy, and I love those. I think the 4 R's, I spend my time when I want to kind of get away from things, just taking a long walk, and I think of that as my retreat, and I spend time reflecting, so it gets me started at least on 2 of the R's. But for most of us, who is the enemy of self-care, or what is the enemy?
Typically, it's ourselves. It's our inability to know what we need, or to pay attention to ourselves. There's so many myths about self-care being selfish, and a lot of people negate the benefits of self-care. Let's take me, for example. The first chapter in the book deals with stress. And according to the CDC, over 110 million deaths are related to stress-related ailments, 110 deaths a year due to stress-related ailments. And so a person like me who operates at a high level of stress, I've been a trauma chaplain. I've been a chaplain for the police department. I, deal with a lot of businesses, and I'm also a licensed mental health professional and activist as well. So when you look at all of these things, I have a very high stress, and I work well in chaotic situations. So for me, it's not very easy to find what's my burnout point, what's my breaking point. So I have to be very intentional in saying, am I getting easily aggravated or irritated or frustrated? Am I sleeping well at night? These are all telltale signs of saying you're burning yourself out. And a lot of people don't pay attention to those telltale signs. It's like when your car check engine light come on your car and you say, well, it seems okay. Nothing's wrong. We'll just keep moving.
Sounds like you've been in my car and you know my faults. Now you've got me concerned. As soon as the show is over, I'm going to go out and check if that light's still on. So you've already done your good deed for today.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
And it's funny, you mentioned ministry, but I think most of us think, oh, gee, I wish I was part of that. That pastor, that minister always looks composed and placid. But I know from reading your book, that is a very high-stress position, because you can be ready for dinner and you get a call from someone who needs your input, needs you at a hospital, needs your prayers, and all of a sudden your life has changed almost as much as the family that you're helping.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you take any position of leadership, and pastoring and being a chaplain is one of those, there's a very small pool of people that you can talk to, that you can decompress with. We talk about the different, disparities between CEOs and employees and things like that. And what I like to highlight is that even CEOs and leaders of companies and in places, they have stress as well. And when you're in a position of leadership, there's really no one you can talk to. And so that's why in the book, I talk about the importance of mentors and coaches and accountability partners, people that will hold you honest. I have several accountability partners and mentors, and my accountability partners have the authority to tell me when A, I'm acting out of character, B, I'm overdoing it, and they help me to check on those points of stress that I need to either calm myself down or to change directions, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think that's wonderful that you're willing to do that, because most of us, as we get into more authoritative positions, we don't want someone else telling us, don't do this, do that. You should take time out for yourself. It's kind of, hey, wait, I'm busy, and, like any doctor, CEO, policeman, I have a high-stress position, and that's what comes with my position. So it's a topic I want to get into later on and talk some more about. But at this point in the show, I just want our audience to know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Robert Allen. He's the author of Self-Care. Let's start the conversation. Robert, we're going to ask you, where can we get your book, Self-Care, and is there a website where we can get more information?
Absolutely. For those who want to get the book, you can go to www.rwallenbooks.com. There you will find Self-Care Let's Start the Conversation, our 12-week journal, and a lot of other materials and things that you will absolutely love. One of my favorites is our shirt that says, "Do not disturb, self-care mode."
I like that. Very good. And I think we all want one of those. We want to see it around when we get out and we know people are taking care of themselves. And
yes, sir.
No one can say to you, you don't know what it's like in my profession or my job, because you've done most of them. And I think I was kidding you even about being on the ping pong team or the Olympics or something before the show. And you said even that's one of the sports you engage in and you enjoy. So you've done just about everything. I'm not going to look for things that you haven't covered. You've been there and you've done that. Now, Robert, one of the comments I wrote down to myself about your book, you have a section where you say, ask why, W-H-Y, 5 times. What is that about?
Well, that came from a simple problem-solving technique, which it helps the person ask themselves. So when you say why the first time, you're thinking about it. And, the way that we're conditioned, when we want stuff, we want it. So we don't take the time to slow ourselves down to say, well, why do I really want it? Well, why do I need it? And ask the whys and the whats that come along with the whys, so that you can put it into perspective to say, this is something I really need or something that I really want. And so self-care needs to be one of those things that you need and not want.
And that's so true. And I realized as I'm preparing for the show, this is a topic we rarely hear about. We hear about some of the subjects you mentioned on the perimeter engaged with other subjects, but not caring for ourselves. And of course, when we come right down to it, we're the most important people in the world, because if we're not around, pretty much nothing else matters. So we better listen to what you have to say. Now, in your book, you bring out a lotto example, and I think we all have fun with that, and I know that's going to cure all my problems someday, but I'm just waiting a long time for that someday to come. Talk about lotto and why you mention it in the book.
Because a lot of people think that money is the cure for everything. If I just had enough money, then money will equal more time and more freedom, and I'll be able to do more and be able to take care of myself. I put the example of the lotto in the book because a good portion of the people, I believe the numbers are above 70% of those people suffer from either mental health, depression, suicidality, and all of these things. So money did not cure a lot of the dysfunction and other things that come along with coming into a great deal of money or a great deal of wealth. These people typically bought things that they wanted, not needed. But when you have that much money, those are some of the things that you would want to do. But they didn't necessarily take care of themselves. And so I think it's important for people to know that self-care isn't necessarily a thing that is going to cost you anything. You can practice good self-care and have a good mental capacity doing simple things by just taking time out of your day and out of your schedule to say, I'm going to intentionally, that's a word that I will always echo, intentionally take care of myself. I will intentionally take the time to think about those things that are important to me and how to decompress.
I remember years ago someone talking about their job and telling me how they really like their job, etc. And then we got into the lotto question, and this is decades ago. And we talked about what we'd do if we won lotto. And the same person who told me how great he enjoyed his work and he loved it, I said, what would you do, Joe, if you won lotto? He said, first thing I'd do is quit my job. And, I think if there's certain jobs that people truly love. Teachers seem to really enjoy what they do and get a lot of satisfaction from it. I won't tell you what he did. It was a good professional job, but his feeling was that if he hit that big lotto ticket, he was going to jump from that job immediately. So I think he might have been a good candidate to ask why. Why is he staying with that job? And why does he either like it or not like it? And what could he do to change it? He should have read the first few chapters of your book.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes.
No, that's okay. And it's a true story. Now, Robert, all of us have to get through life, so we develop some coping skills skills. Are these good and bad? And can you tell us what some of the coping skills are, and that we probably see either in ourselves, our spouse, our brother, or just, people we work with every day?
Well, absolutely. So, in the book, I talk about habits and I talk about coping skills and mechanisms. And we don't all practice good habits, or, we have some bad habits and some good habits, which also contribute to how we cope with things. Whether it be grief, whether it be stress. I use an example in the book about a little boy who has asthma. And the mother tells the little boy, as the little boy is running around the house and playing with friends, and he begins to wheeze, and the mother tells him to stop. Then you have people who have rescue inhalers, and you take the rescue inhaler and you keep taking it. Well, with the little example with the little boy, the mother stops the little boy and begins to tell him, you have to begin to learn your body. You can't run and do all these things like the other children, because, you have something that you need to take care of that's inside of you that you have to slow down. So you have to learn your body. The little kid grows up and began to know how to listen to his body and understand his body. So he's not always taking a rescue inhaler. Key point, rescue inhaler. You don't want something to rescue you all the time, because you have not learned how to take care of you. And so learning healthy coping mechanisms and healthy skills in order to not be at that point where you need rescuing all the time. And so if I can give that visual image to anyone who's ever suffered with asthma or bronchitis, who may understand what I'm talking about, that learning and understanding your body and knowing when to take a break is absolutely essential. And I equate that to self-care.
Now, Robert, you mentioned the word habits, and I copied some stats right from your book. You say our life is the sum of our habits. Certainly makes sense. And something like 40% or maybe even more of our actions are not conscious decisions. Can you talk about habits and get into something that you call, and I think it's known throughout the psychological world, as the habit loop? What is that?
And so these are things that we don't even know we do. I'll use a funny story really quickly. My son, we just took him off to college. He's studying to be an astrophysicist. So we dropped him off last week. So absolutely proud of him. But he was in the house, and I went to the refrigerator, opened the door, and I scratched my stomach, looked in, closed it, did it again. So my son said, "Dad, do you know," he just started laughing. He said, "Do you know every time you go into the kitchen and you look into the refrigerator, you scratch your stomach, you look, you close it, and you repeat that twice?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that I did that." So the very next time I went in and I did it again, and it was made aware to me that I do it.
And you never thought of it. It's just something you're doing, I guess, subconsciously saying, what's going to taste good and sit in the stomach and make me happy.
Exactly. And so it was very odd to know that I did that, but it was a habit. And so once he brought it to my attention, I was able to catch myself. And these are some of the things that I do. Now, that was something very simplistic, but let's look at other habits that I've done throughout the years that I did not know that I did. It was unbeknown to me, but known to someone else.
Now, what is the habit loop? What does that mean, and how can we use it to help ourselves?
Well, first you have to become aware of the habit. In order to break the habit, Charles Duhigg does an absolutely phenomenal job in explaining. He has the whole book on habits, and so that's where I borrowed from. But it takes a great amount of time to start new habits. So to get out of the habit loop, one, you have to understand or begin to be aware of the habits that you do. And then you have to begin to replace those with healthier habits if that habit that you are exhibiting is not a good habit. And so it takes, I believe, 40 days upwards to begin to form better habits or healthier habits. And so that's how you get out of the loop.
I was thinking of you just the other day because I was preparing the notes and I had that question on habits. And my wife mentioned to me, she said, you know that ice cream that you eat every night, do you know how much sugar is in there? And I said, no, it didn't have, it had a different name called Frosty or Treat or something like that. And she said, you know, the medium size, I was looking up and it has 65 grams of sugar. Well, I'm one of these people who, once you tell me how much sugar is in something, it scares me. And it's almost like a man with a gun coming at me. And I said, are you kidding me? It tastes so bland. You know, it's not something very sweet. I thought it was I guess what they would call a light dessert. She said, no, the size you're eating, that's 65 grams of sugar. Well, I haven't had it since. And she definitely knows how to scare me and knew which button to push. And that was the right button because she knows if I look at a label and I see more than 6 or 8 or 12 grams of sugar, I'm usually going to put the product aside and substitute something with less sugar. So I can vouch for what you're saying. It works. Robert,
it does work.
Before we go further, I have a habit, and that's getting a statement in throughout the show to let our audience know that they're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Robert Allen. He's the author of the book, Self-Care. Let's start the conversation. Robert, would you tell us one way we can get this book and if there's a website where we can learn more about it?
Absolutely. For all those who are listening, you can go to www.rwallenbooks.com. There you can get the book, Self-Care, Let's Start the Conversation, and all other merchandise that we have listed on our website.
Now, you mentioned in the book about taking care of ourselves. Obviously, that's what this is about. And one of the things I found, and you say in there that we have to have clear boundaries about saying yes and no. I guess we take on a lot of things. And if you're in an organization, if you do a good job, someone will say, Robert, will you do this or will you follow up with this? And it's yet another task that you have to do or, you know, the listener has to do. How do we set those boundaries? Can you give us some advice?
Absolutely. So I talk about the power of no. And no doesn't have to be forever, but it can be no. It could be no, not right now, and no, not at this time. A lot of us, we take on way more than we can handle. I have family members who love to take on more and to say, oh, I'll do this because they feel as if, you know, if I don't do it, then it's going to be a lag or something like this. And so a lot of times we overextend ourselves by just saying no. But when you think about it, we live in such a competitive time where we feel that the people who always say yes will either get a leg up or have more advancement or things like that. But what we have to realize is if we overextend ourselves and we burn ourselves out, then whatever we said yes to, we're not even operating at 100%. So it's better to say no to some things, not right now, and to be able to do those things that you can or do have some control over and do those at 100% versus 50 or 40 or 30%.
I knew a professional person who, you know, was well thought of in the business world and the position he was in. And he confided in me one day. I said, why do you do things like this and take this on, et cetera? And he said, I just want to be liked. And as I started watching him, and this is a mature man in a highly important profession, as I started watching him, all of his actions were with that as the goal. He would literally not return phone calls if he didn't have good news for people. And of course, that would upset them because people would say, wait, if you're not calling me back, it must be bad. He just didn't have any news or, you know, the result hadn't come in yet, etc. And he always felt that if he called someone back and didn't have positive news, he would be giving them something in the negative zone. So he didn't want to be thought of that way. He had such a need to be liked. And I guess more of us may even have that than we realize in our day-to-day lives. Now, you had mentioned before the words mentor and accountability partner. I thought that was very interesting. And in fact, I wanted to bring that up and get some more information about that. Would you explain to our audience what those positions are?
Okay, so a mentor is, could be someone that you look up to, you aspire to be, not be like, but aspire to reach areas that they've reached, and you have a healthy respect and admiration for. these people, whoever they may be. I have several mentors, and my mentors have been instrumental in helping me to develop and helping me to mature. And so the mentor-mentee relationship has to have boundaries. This is not yes people. This is not people who's just going to pat you on the back. These are people that's going to help you develop a path that you will follow to get to your next level, whatever that is. Accountability partners work a little bit differently. Accountability partners are people that you give access to you and also give the authority to help put you in your place and to check you on things that you may need to be checked on. So for me, I have an accountability partner who helps me with patience. I like to think that I have a good amount of patience, but I know I also struggle with having patience. I get a vision. I want to go with it. I'm 100% in. This accountability partner says, no, stop. Did you do your 5 whys? So they throw things back at me and say, well, do you need to do that right now in your life? Is this a good time for you to do it? I have another accountability partner that works with me on another area, and it helps me with my character to ensure that I'm not overextending myself. So one helps me with patience. The other one helps me with being able to say no. As a minister and as a chaplain and a business person, I love to just help people. And so I need someone to check me and say, hey, are you overextending yourself?
How often, Robert, do you deal with these people so that they give you feedback on what you're doing?
Oh, so I check in with my accountability partners, if not once a week, at least once every other week. So there's either 4 times within that month or at least 2 times in that month, depending on how I'm doing. Now, this does not negate a therapist. They are not your therapist. If you suffer from a mental health illness, please seek a professional who can help you with those areas. These are just people who you have given permission to help you in some areas like patience and other elements that are non-professionally needed, if that makes sense.
It does, and I think you have to have a good person in that role, because people don't want to say to you that, hey, Robert, you're being rude to people or you're being a little quick with them this last week. But if they're a good friend and if they're good in their competencies, they know that by doing that, they're going to make you a better person, and obviously that's what you want. Robert, we want to thank you. Whenever we have a show like this, the time goes much too quickly, but we'd like to mention to our audience again, our guest is Robert Allen, Allen. The book is Self-Care. Let's start the conversation. And real quick, give us that website.
Yes, www.rwallenbooks.com.
Easy enough to remember. Thanks so much, Robert. We'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.